So now, starting on day 83 of this US Israel Iran conflict that the world's been watching to see where it's going to end up. Well, we know that yesterday made headlines that President Trump was on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And essentially, there was a conflict from insiders saying that it seemed that the president of the United States wants to proceed and come to some sort of a peace plan. And that has been what, because of his polling numbers that have come down, the unaffordability crisis in the United States, when it comes to essentially, the inflation rates, gas prices. So that's all a big concern for this president. And for that, well, he essentially got on the phone with the Israeli prime minister to discuss it, who has also indicated, the Israeli prime minister, that he's ready to go back to combat with Iran. Essentially, some of the key concerns there are the enriched uranium that's still inside of Iran and where things stand on that. So we heard from insider reports that essentially there was a bit of a conflict between the two of them, but as one of the greatest allies to each other, United States and Israel, we're going to see what that means. But now we've heard reports that Tehran is reviewing the response from the United States, and essentially they're going to come back with where they stand. Now, it seems like there's still a standstill on some contentious issues when it comes to the enriched uranium, when it comes to the nuclear program, when it comes to the authority over the Strait of Hormuz. And more so, we're seeing that this peace proposal is being negotiated through Pakistan in terms of mediation efforts. We know that Oman was in there. We know that Russia said that they would step up if they need to, as well as China. But of course, the back channels are also going through China. So that's very interesting to watch and be mindful of. So now we know that this diplomacy effort from President Trump, as well as the Iranians, are still active. There has been reports from the Iranian Foreign Ministry saying that indirect negotiations are taking place, and it is all through Pakistan. We know that there was the first round of meetings that took place in Islamabad between the two nations that was headed by Vice President J.D. Vance. And so now at day 83, we're going to see where things stand. Now, Tehran has been saying in this past month and a half in this ceasefire since April 8th, that the United States has demands that they call maximalist. Essentially, some of the demands are for Iran to dismantle their uranium enrichment, surrender their missile capabilities, or give up their, leverage when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, which, as we showed you earlier this week, they already opened up a Twitter page on them being the authority on the Strait of Hormuz as a place for, everyone to go in and check to see what is the status on the Strait of Hormuz. So we know that that's all taking place. At the same time, Iran is saying, well, they want sanctions relief. They want a release of their frozen assets, guarantees against any future attacks, and compensation reparations for the war damages. To that, we're keeping in a close eye, because as we hear President Trump say that this deal could be done anytime or any day soon, at the same time, we hear him talk about that if the peace proposal is not met, then things could amplify and trigger a wider conflict within the next coming days. We know that the GCC countries, such as Oman, Saudi Arabia, and UAE, have essentially asked the president to, still hold back and go through the diplomatic channels, because they're the first line of attack, right? If things do escalate with Iran again, we saw that take place in that 39-day war, as well as last year in the 12-day war, where the military bases in Saudi Arabia, UAE, were attacked. So that is a kind of a pushback to stabilize the markets. We know that it's increased significantly when it comes to oil prices. We saw crude at $107 per barrel this week, and inflation's at 3.8% in the United States. The latest numbers in Canada for April are 2.8% inflation. So we're seeing a global impact. And when it comes to Pakistan specifically, we're seeing in this issue, this conflict that's taking place between Israel, United States, and Iran, Pakistan is emerging as a critical mediator, right? So we're seeing Pakistan's growing role to be able to go back and forth on this peace proposal, hosting meetings in person, and essentially relaying the proposal, drafting the frameworks, and attempting to restart the stalled negotiations that we've seen take place in the last few weeks. Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir seems to be, heading this entire effort, and he's expected to engage directly with Tehran this week to be able to renew the diplomacy efforts. Strait of Hormuz is the contentious part. It still, is about the security in the Strait of Hormuz when it comes to naval restriction and access, and what we're seeing with the double blockade of the U.S. vessels on the Iranian ports. The Strait of Hormuz is the 20% of global oil supply, which is very strategic. And to that, China's been impacted as, about 40% of its energy comes from the Strait of Hormuz. It's impacted South Korea, Japan, India. So massive escalation points. And experts are warning that if this continues, we're looking at massive inflation spikes. We're looking at, when it comes to some African countries, due to the fertilizer that comes out of the Strait of Hormuz, we're looking at famine. So a lot of things that are happening now on the global front that President Trump would want to get ahead of.
Watch the full show on Channel Y Media Plus, and Channel Y USA.